How many of your mates are recreational gamblers? How many of them decide to go do a punt once a week or go to the TAB? Well, my next guest was a professional gambler. He studied economics at university over in the UK and then worked and ran his own professional gambling syndicate. He then went and studied a master's in performance psychology and now presents to you today his journey as a professional gambler and what he's doing now with his life. Mikey Knowles is a wonderful dude, and a lot of the podcasts he's been on before, he's never really discussed this. So guys, you're in for a treat. We talk sports, it's lighthearted, we talk a bit of gambling, and we talk about some high performance skills and lessons that you could learn to help improve your life. Welcome to Squeezing the Plums. This is episode 9, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. Mate, thank you so much for coming on. I am
Just that.
just that alone is great. You know, so before we got on air, you spoke about going on and doing a week acting course, yeah?
Yeah.
Just run me through that, because you did that splendidly.
So that was in Edinburgh in our summer in Scotland in 2019. And I was going to go on a public speaking course because I knew I wanted to do some workshops or speaking, but there weren't any available. So I just went, I'll just go on an acting course. And we did all sorts of things like that. So they got you to read out this scene from Hamlet. And they would say, right, do it in joy, or do it in sadness, or do it in anger, or do it in being excitable. And then on every full stop, you had to change direction, and at every comma, you had to like go slow or something like that. So then they would mix up things like that, and that was cool. And they even got us to act out a scene where you were doing something else as you were acting the scene. So we were having to go through our morning routine. It was like this technique. I can't remember the name of it. But we were going through our morning routine, so we're pretending to wash our face, brushing our teeth, making our breakfast, as we're acting out this quite difficult scene. So you're trying to go through, and it's to get you outside of your head, so you just start to say the words in a different way. So yeah, so it was interesting how it came about and some of the things we learned.
Why did you do it, out of curiosity?
It was something I'd never really done. And it was also just a way that I felt as though, because there's so much of speaking and doing workshops and is telling stories, and really acting is telling either your story or someone else's story. So I thought it's going to be helpful in some way. And I was just intrigued as well. And I just thought, why not just say yes and have a go?
So I know a little bit about your story.
Yes.
So if people were to know you as they know you now, you're a performance psychologist, you work with clients, you run public speaking classes, you run workshops on building your incredible, which is your workshop name, I believe that's correct?
Yes, it's Build Your Incredible. I'm not actually a performance psychologist technically, but I've done a performance psychology master's. I think it's just a slight differentiation. I don't want to get anyone suing me, but but yeah, I have definitely been on quite a journey, I guess, with my career. I guess it'd be quite unconventional. In the sense that I started out in the gambling industry. So I actually went to university and did an economics degree.
Right.
So I started off in St Andrews in Scotland, which is an incredible sleepy town in the middle of nowhere, basically. And it wasn't a thing. No one knew about it. And then in our first year, or halfway through our first year, it was announced that Prince Will was going to come to our university the next year. So all of a sudden that put it on the map. Everyone wanted to go there. It had been like a middling university, and then all of a sudden it was a straight A university. So a lot of my friends were like, oh, we're in trouble now because it's going to get a lot higher standard. But it's also famous for golf. And it's got the oldest golf course in the world and everything like that. So I went there to do economics, but really I hated it. I really didn't like economics. I had a great time at the uni. I was partying and loving it and playing golf. But then I got the opportunity to do more psychology-based stuff, and it was more how people actually behave in an economic way, and it was very much around behavioral economics, and that got me introduced to psychology and also the decisions that people make. And that got me interested. And I did my dissertation on decision making, on heuristics, on biases, and heuristics being the rules of thumb that people use to make decisions, and the biases and irrationalities that they pick up along the way. So that really intrigued me, and I was also very interested in sport, played a lot of golf, interested in all sports, and that led me, I guess those two things, quite a mathematical background, led me to the sports industry, or the sports betting industry, which is where I got my first job at a company called Sport and Index in London, which was the world-leading sports spread betting company, and they would price up different sports, so like cricket, golf, football, and you would be able to bet on the number of goals in the game, or the number of corners, or the number of yellow cards, or whatever that might be, or the number of runs that a batsman might make. But just like shares, you could buy or sell, if you see what I mean. So you could bet on someone to do badly or do well. And I was a golf trader for them, and that led me into my career as being a professional bettor and running a sports betting syndicate down the line.
I'm glad you explained what heuristics are.
Yes.
Because that one absolutely went over my head. Can you just say that again? What does that actually mean?
So a heuristic is a rule of thumb that people use to make decisions quickly. So it's a time saving hack, and 90% of the time it works great. But in 10% of the time it can create essentially biases where we don't think in the right way.
Could you give me an example?
Yeah, so for example, if you saw someone that was smiling, you might think, oh, this person's friendly. Okay, this person's not a threat. Okay, and that works most of the time until you run into a con man or a con person. Okay, and a con man would literally be short for confidence man, in that they give you confidence, they're charming, they make you feel good, and they disarm you to get whatever they want out of you, but money or information or whatever you see. So that would be a heuristic where, oh, this person means me no harm, until you run into someone who's better at hiding what their true agenda is.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
It is, yeah.
So is that effectively stereotyping? Or it's like the patterning behind your stereotyping of situations?
Yeah,
and
I
people?
mean, you could say that heuristics, or one heuristic would be a generalization. So you generalize a population, and maybe you'll be right quite a lot of the time, but there'll be times where you're wrong. And that's obviously going to lead you to making suboptimal decisions in that field or in that particular time. And sometimes in those situations, even though you're right 90% of the time, it's those things that can really hurt you the 10% of the time, which is why you've got to be aware of them.
So when you finish your economics degree and you've gone into working in this field, you said that you ran a professional gambling syndicate.
Yeah.
As well. Was that on the side, or was that like part of what you were doing?
Well, I'll give you the story, I guess, of how it came to be. So I was, so I was working on nights to start with, and it was 7 days, 7 nights on, seven nights off. So I was on that for a few months, and it was pretty cool because you could just go off snowboarding for a week, come back, and everything like that. So I was having a great time. But then the opportunity came to come onto days. And as a golf trader, they opened up. So I was like, brilliant, let's go for it. But quite quickly, I realized, well, to start with, I was a bit naive about the whole situation. But then I started to see that people were making quite really good money. And I realized there was probably an opportunity to make some really good income out of this. And gambling winnings, or if you win or lose at betting, it's tax-free, but you don't get any tax relief. So essentially, if you win, you can keep your money, which is obviously a big thing as well. And the wages were pretty rubbish. You were living in London. I think my starting wage was £20,500, which is about $40,000 at the moment because the exchange rate is good. Now, this was back in 2004, but it wasn't a lot of money to live in London at all. And the progression wasn't very good. So even though I had a good degree and I knew my stuff, you were expected to work weekends, long nights. So when I started to realize you can actually make money in this, and most of the people are making more money than in their gambling than from the wages, quite quickly I thought, well, I might as well, if I don't need this information, and a lot of people use some of the information they got in working, then it'd be better to go out on my own and just cut the middleman out, and I'll just spend all my time trying to make money. So at the first opportunity, that's basically was my plan, and I managed to do that.
How old were you?
So, well, do you want me to tell you the story? Because it is a challenging story of how it came to be.
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Okay. There's quite a lot of different markets for the golf, okay? And you used to be able to bet on players to do certain things. And one of them was just to make the cut. Now, in a golf tournament, you've maybe got 150 players. And half of those make the weekend. So like 75 players about. So if you're in the top half, you carry on for the weekend and then you get a paycheck, and the other half just go home and don't make any money. That's basically how professional golf is set up. And we found this opportunity one week, or I found this opportunity where it was a smaller field. So instead of having 150 players, you only had about 110 players or 100 players. But still, the top 75 players got through to the weekend. But they hadn't adjusted the prices to make the cut, even though generally only 50% make it, and this week it was more like 65%. So the prices were wrong, basically. And I spotted that and was like, oh, this is a really big opportunity. And I didn't have much money at the time. It was it was about mid-2005. And I probably had no savings. I'd just come out of uni, and I'd been trying to gamble for about 9 months and not really had much success. And I was kind of thinking, am I really going to be able to make any money? These guys are making money, but can I make money? So what I'd done is I'd put 8 of these players into a multi where they all needed to make the cut, and I would win. And 7 of them had come in, and I was waiting on one guy to win £15,000. Okay, and I had about £500 in my pocket. That was it. So this was going to be a game changer. I'd already decided what I wanted to do, which was, quit my job. And it came down to this guy. I think he had to play the back 9 in 2 over par, which is not that difficult for professional golf. And it came to the last hole, and he just needed to 2-putt from about here to, well, you can't see it, but about 20 foot over there. So just 20 foot, just take 2 putts. Has anyone played that? Have you played Holy Moly?
Yes.
Yeah, so there's no clowns, there's no moving obstacles, you don't have to do anything. Literally just a flat green 2-putt. And he put the first one up to about there.
Yeah.
And then he missed the putt. So literally from having a chance to make 15 grand, it just evaporated. And it wasn't like these chances came along all that often. Like you were thinking like, oh wow, that was maybe it, So that kind of really hurt me at the time for a few weeks. I took it pretty hard. I remember like going, geez, I just don't know if I'm going to get another chance at this, because sometimes you might get a chance, maybe you won't. But what I actually then started to do at the time, I took a little book with me everywhere, and I wrote on, every bet I did. So like even if I played pool in the pub and I was betting for £5, I'd put it in the book. And I had a running total, so I was like, minus £500 or plus £200, and I would sort of keep track of every bet, why I did it, what I learned from it, and I was starting to try and like essentially learn my craft. And because this bet didn't win, I was obviously still betting in £20 and £50 and £100, but little by little I started to build it up, and I got from like £1,000 to £2,000 to 2,500 and back and forward, and it got to about a year later, and this is early 2006, and I managed to build up my stack to about 10 grand. So I was like, I'd done really well, and I had this bet that if it came in, it was going to be for, I think, 4 or 5 grand, which was going to put me at higher than the level I'd been previously if I'd won that bet. So it was obviously a big thing, and I remember it was February in London, and it was freezing cold, and I'm stood on the train tracks, and it's a little bit of snow, and I'm checking my phone, and whenever you're checking for a result, you kind of half looking, you're like, oh, is this going to be like absolute pain, or is this going to be relief normally? And I looked, and I was like, yes, come in, and it had won, and it got to 15 grand. I basically made the money that I'd never thought I might actually make, and straight away I was like, oh my God, this is actually happening, I'm actually doing this. And then a kind of second thought came where I felt as though what happens you know, when you get that feeling of when things are going really well, like, oh my God, what happens if something goes wrong? And I actually thought someone might just push me on the train tracks. And I took a step back and just thought, oh my God, you know, when you get that kind of paranoid feeling? And thankfully, no one did do that, and nothing did go wrong. But literally, I went back to work, and the very next week, I quit my job, and that was it. And that was in April 2006, and then I never worked for anyone else again. I went off, set up on my own originally, and then kind of built it up from there. And yeah, thankfully, I had a good run and did okay.
Wow, that feeling that you got when you missed it. You know, I mean, I'm not a professional gambler, but, you know, I've betted a few times. And when you put something on the line, like I had one time where I was playing poker with a bunch of mates, and none of my mates knew, but I was broke as fuck. Like, I had zero money. Yeah. And they'd raised the blind more than I had thought they were going to raise the blind.
And you were like, wow.
And I was like, I can't do it. But like, this is it. Like, I've got no money after this. Now, I mean, that feeling of when you don't win, I mean, I'm not going to go into that story too much, but how do you process something like that? Because there are people that gamble every single day, some professionally as well. What was your thought process? What were the notes that you made to help you get over that?
And I guess the first thing to say is that I'm not promoting gambling in any sense. Like, for me, it was just a medium where I felt like I had an advantage. And just like, I guess, anyone who's trading stocks or who's trading commodities who feel like they can actually win because they do their research. So I'm certainly not promoting gambling for anyone. But I do think that in terms of, I never liked gambling per se. I kind of did before I started doing it, maybe like just playing poker and stuff. But when I got into it, I just saw it as a means to an end. And certainly I enjoyed the intellectual challenge, but I didn't enjoy the emotional roller coaster of it. So I learned quite early on that I generally wouldn't watch a game if I had a big bet on it. Like, I would just turn my phone off. There's been times where I've had tens of thousands of pounds and I've not even known till like 3 hours after the game's finished if we've won or not, because I've just not even wanted to check. Because a lot of these times it's the last minute losses that really hurt you, when things look really good and then you lose. And I was opinion is like, this is not really doing me any favors. And yeah, I might lose the odd one where I can't trade out of it in running, but that's probably in the long run, it's probably for the best. So I just left it. I would literally just turn my phone off, go and do something else. And afterwards, when I was ready to check, I would literally check it. And I would either be like, great, like, and it would take me I got to the point where it would take me probably 20 minutes to get over a bad loss. And then I would be like, okay, right, fine. But that took quite a lot of time, like, to get to that point. I remember I got to the point in my mind where I was like, when I'm going out with my friends or my girlfriend or whatever, I don't want them to know or suspect that I've won or lost. Like, I'm trying to go out in that night as if they would never know if I'd won or lost on that day. You know, that was my goal, and hopefully I achieved that most of the time, but certainly, like, internally, I think I would have burned out, because I did it for about 15 years, I would have burned out a lot quicker or a lot earlier. I don't think I really did burn out, but I think I would have done if I was basically going on the roller coaster of all of those bets and watching those games and stuff. It allowed me to distance myself a little bit from the outcome, if you see what I mean.
Did your parents ever find out about you working as a professional gambler?
Yeah, they were quite supportive, as long as I took it seriously. You know, as long as I was putting the work in, they were cool about it. But they obviously didn't want to see me just mess around. But they knew that I was working hard, and I think they could see my dad came up with a database, and he was amazing, and my mum was very supportive as well. But my dad actually came up with a database that has allowed us to track all of the bets and all of the transactions, so we could actually see our balance in all of because we had at one point hundreds of betting accounts. So to keep track of all the different balances was obviously a big undertaking, and my dad created this database that probably was worth hundreds of thousands to us. You know, in the end, it made us a lot of money. It told us where we were winning and stuff like that. But so they were very supportive. In fact, more than supportive, they really helped us. So yeah. Did you see a big difference between the professional gambler and the gambler that
gambled a lot but wasn't professional? Were there like traits and things that they did versus someone like yourself that meant that they were always going to fall?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and you see, and the reason I do a lot of this is because I think so much of it's applicable to life. One of the big things that I saw in professional gamblers, or even in, I guess, amateur gamblers, is that people don't stake big enough on the things where they've got a genuine edge, and they bet too big on the things where they've not got an edge. You see what I mean? So they might have say in my line of work, a relative, they might have £1,000 on something they've got a good edge in, and they'll have £500 on an interest bet. And it's like, right, you should be having 200 quid on an interest bet and then £5,000 on the great bet, you know? So getting your stake, if you can, often you can't get the amount of money you want to get on, which is another kind of issue, which we spent a lot of time trying to get bets on. But if you can get the stake on, you want to have more. And I think that's the same in life, is when you get a really great opportunity, you really need to push your chips in, so to speak, and make sure that you've got sizable skin in the game, because they don't come along all that often sometimes, you know. So you've got to they will come along, but you've got to go for it when you get a chance, you know. And I think too many people like kind of sit like 1 foot in. So I'd say that was important. That was a really important thing. And I think the second thing is not being able to be disciplined enough to stick to certain strategies. And the hardest thing, funnily enough, is when things are going good, not getting too overconfident. And when things are going bad, the hardest thing is to keep on putting the money in. So there's nothing worse than when you've had 4 bad weekends in a row and you've lost whatever, 10 grand each weekend. And then the 5th weekend, you're thinking, like, God, I just hope there's no great bets. I just really don't want any great bets. And then straight away, there's like 2 bets that jump off the page, and you're like, well, I'm gonna have to go big again, you know, because if I'm going to stick to my strategy, I've just got to keep betting them, you know. So you've got to be able to keep just when you feel like going into your shell, you've got to keep your head out there and basically keep fighting. And you want to talk about resilience, and you want to talk about challenge. That's probably the most challenging thing, is when you're having a really bad run. You might have gone 3 or 4 months where you're just losing money. And when things go bad in your normal job, you still get paid, right? When things go bad in gambling, you're not even on zero. You're losing. You might be working flat out for 4 months and you've actually lost money. So you're like, what is going on? And certainly the times when you go, no, I'm sticking to my strategy, I'm going with my guns, I'm pushing my chips in again, and then it loses again, and then you do it the next week. But the time when it wins, that's the time where you're like, you know, get in, like, because you know you've done it tough, you know? It's the time, it's like the sports person that's come back after 3 years of injuries and everything, and then they win then. They're the ones that mean the most. You know, that's when the challenge and adversity, I feel like, it means the most, you know?
There's a guy at my cricket club who's a professional gambler in greyhounds. And I know the boys always used to ask him, oh, who's going to get up? We'll give you a little bit of money.
Yeah.
You know, just like, that was his job. Mm. Did you have any mates that were like, Mikey, here, I'll give you $100 a week. Can you, whatever you're putting it on, can you put it on for me too?
Yeah, you would get a lot of people asking you. And I said, look, it's not really the money thing, because we can only get on so much money. And the bets are quite specific. So that's not really going to help me. But yeah, you would get lots of people asking for tips. But I basically pretty much ran a rule where I didn't really give any tips. I did give a few tips actually in the law. I learned my lesson the hard way after tipping her for a horse one time. And it just ran terribly. And I just got a load of abuse off my friends. So I just said, I'm just not going to bother. Because if it wins, all they want, people just get greedy and they want more tips. And if it loses, obviously, all you just get is a load of rubbish. So it's not really worth it, to be honest. And people don't get it. Like, you say, oh, this is a great bet. A great bet might be that the pricing up at 20% likely and you make it 30% likely. Still going to lose 70% of the time. Now, I can handle that. People there are going to go, oh, great, I'll just stick my month's wage on it. It's a sure thing. And it's just like, no, it's not a sure thing, mate. It's 30% likely. Like, it's still, but in the long run, you make enough of these bets, you're obviously going to win. The difference is I can just go the next week and just keep on. I've got the bank and the ability to get the bets on and the stream of bets to know that I'm still going to be able to do it going forward. But people who are just taking a random tip, you don't know if that guy's going to, that's the thing with stock tips. You don't know when they're exiting. You don't know how much conviction they've got into it. When things go bad, you don't know if they're going to be topping up and all that kind of stuff. So it's really hard to follow in someone who's successful anyway.
I'd love to know your best win and the win that hurt the most.
Okay. Well, the win that hurt the most, the one that hurt the most was Skip Kendall was definitely up there. I'll tell a story. It was probably the one that I lost the most money, which...
Are you able to say how much or not?
I'll give a ballpark, but I'd had a really good run at the start of 2012. Actually, this leads into another story. That's quite interesting. So I'd had a really good run at the start of 2012, and essentially at the end of 2011, a few things had become apparent to me that I needed to change my strategy. There'd been almost like an epiphany moment, which had really led to this realization that I needed to change my strategy and come out. And I went away in the winter of 2011, changed my strategy, and it came out all guns blazing 2012, and we had the best 3 months we'd ever had. Really focused on rugby league and football, and I was on fire. And then I'd always loved golf, and I'd always had a soft spot for Tiger Woods. Like Tiger Woods, in my opinion, probably the greatest closing in a sport that's not easy to dominate. That's what people don't get. Tennis has been dominated by both the men and the women. You get people who dominate for an era. Pretty much no one has been able to do that in golf because it's so difficult, it's so random, and you're playing 150 players and you've got no influence on their ball. In tennis, you can play to a person's weakness, and you've just got to beat 6 guys or 7 guys to win the tournament. And a lot of them are scared of you, and it's very difficult even to take a set off someone like Nadal or Federer or Djokovic. In golf, Tiger had to go out there, beat 150 guys, and he couldn't affect their game. And he managed to win at his best. He was winning like 1 in 2.5 tournaments, or 1 in every 3 or something. It was insane. And he was winning like 13 from the front. Every time he was in the lead, I think he had something like 69 out of 72 from the lead in the PGA Tour. Normally 50% would be a good... he was unbelievable for about a 12-year stretch. And he'd come back from all sorts of marital indiscretions and various things, and it was like 2012, and he just won the Bay Hill by like 5 shots, and he was like 5-1 for the Masters, and I was just like, well, if he's back to his best, he probably should be like 7-4, and if he's not, then he's probably still an all right bet. And because I was on a good run, I just started to get carried away and got very, very involved. So I ended up probably having, I don't know, £80,000 on him, £90,000. So what's
Holy shit!
Yeah, probably about.
Oh my god!
Oh, the best part of $170,000 or whatever. Okay, so then I'm like, I also like Mickelson, because at the time Phil Mickelson was the man at the Masters. He'd won in 2010 and 2004 and 2006, and he was. Augusta, where the Masters is played, is very much a horses for courses type of course. People play well there. They normally play well again and again. So I had to cover him. So then I've got to go, well, I've got to put like 10 grand on him just to get him to 0 after the amount of, because he's about 12-1 or 14-1, but you need to have about that much just to get him to flat. And then I'm trying to back, I'm like, well, Angel Cabrera's pretty good. He's 100-1. I had to £1,000 on him just to get him to flat. So I've ended up outlaying, over £100,000. What? Sort of $200,000 or whatever. And I'm like, okay, so Tiger starts, he's like 2 under through 11, going good. And then I'm out for a meal with my mates that we all gamble together, and we're at this pasta place, and he just goes backwards on the back nine and basically never features in the tournament. So I'm like, oh my God, like I'm screwed. Like I've just literally given away all the money that we'd like basically managed to win, and all these great strategies and all this stuff, and the best free, I'm just basically going to give it all back, which is just insane. So I was like, oh, you idiot. So I was kicking myself, and then I'd kind of written it off because Mickelson wasn't really doing anything. And then on Saturday, I was at my mate Rob's wedding, so Rob Rose's and Jenny Oliver's wedding, and we're on the dance floor, and then all of a sudden I kind of check my phone and just going for it, and then I see that Mickelson shot 66. I'm like, we're back in this. But I've pretty much got everyone else to lose like over 100 grand, and he's like to win like 20 grand. So it's a terrible position, but he's going to get me out of jail. And then it came to the final day, and I was actually trading it. I used to trade it on Betfair, like in running. And the worst player in the field for me was a guy called Louis Oosthuizen. And the best player was Phil Mickelson. And literally simultaneously, I'm watching it, and Louis is in the middle of a par 5, which is basically a hole you should take 5 shots to par, which is their average. And Mickelson's on a par 3. Anyway, just as it goes, Mickelson hits it hits the grandstand and bounces into like this jungle where I'm like, oh, that's not good. That is dead where he is. And then they pan to Louis, who's my worst situation. I've got no money on him whatsoever. And he's got what, 220 meters into the hole. And he goes, oh, look at this. And he goes under the green and it rolls and rolls and rolls and then just falls into the hole for an albatross.
No.
So and Mickelson took a triple bogey. So within the space of 5 minutes, it had just completely gone. Like, as in, Mickelson had gone to, like, no chance, and Louis was the best chance. So I was then just, like, watching this, like, thinking, oh, my God. But I actually managed to trade it, which is probably the thing I'm most proud of, is that I actually bet him as he hold the shot, because I had an order up there, and I managed to trade him down. He didn't end up winning in the end, but I actually traded the tournament really well, despite the fact that I was losing my shirt, which I was actually, like, really proud of. But yeah, I ended up in the end probably losing 100,000. It could have been a lot more.
Oh my God.
It was like there was 2 guys that if they'd won during that, it was going to be like 150 or something.
Fuck.
Yeah. So that stung. That was a big lesson.
How long did that take you? Like, I know when I was going through the share market and the crypto market, and we had the big crash that came off recently.
Yeah.
That one bent me over and, absolutely hurt me big time, right?
Yeah,
and
I get that.
It's like, fuck, I really wish I, took my winnings and put it away as, I was accumulating good wealth. I mean, are there strategies now that you put in play for yourself after when you lose something like that you go, righto, well, this is the money and 10% of my earnings go to this and this goes to this, and this is how much I rebet? Or
well, like I say, I definitely wouldn't advise anyone to do this for a career.
Look, there are gonna be guys that fucking gamble on the weekend. Yeah,
for
every
sure.
Every weekend, some
but
of them.
I guess what I'm saying is that like, emotionally, it's not for everyone. Like, obviously, financially, it's not for everyone. You've got to be able to come up with the bets. You've also then got to logistically be able to get the bets on, but then you've also got to be a bit emotionally be able to deal with it, you see. So I've always been quite strong. A lot of people have what I'd probably call, like, even when they're good, they have this sort of imposter syndrome that they feel like they're always going to lose it. Do you know what I mean? They're always just one bad run away from losing it all, especially if they come from not very much. I think you find that a lot with people who have come from a poor background. Makes them very hungry, and that's often a very good attribute for success. But it also makes them very hard to take a step back. They struggle to ever really walk away from a winning position. They keep on hustling for the whole life, even when they don't need to anymore. And I think, firstly, I was always very much like, okay, well, very confident in my ability that I'd be able to win it back. So I was like, right, you've done something really stupid. I'd emotionally deal with it, and I'd try and make myself learn a lesson. I'd be like, okay, you're an idiot. Like, you have genuinely, and I've made a lot of mistakes. Like, you make a shitload of mistakes. It's just part of the game, right? And that is the paradox with, the funny thing is that the more successful you are, you take people like Michael Jordan, professional sports people in general, the more successful they are, the more failure they will have. And that's the paradox that is, you've got to be prepared to have failures. If you just play it safe, and you probably have very few failures, but you won't have much success. So you've got to see that failures are as much part of success as anything else. In fact, they normally are the things that are going to teach you, and maybe they're the final key that you need to become a championship winning side or a championship winning player, or to be a high performer in whatever field you want to be in. You see, so you need to be able to learn, emotionally deal with failures, but also learn and then bounce back from them. So I did that. And normally what happened was if I had a good run, I was like, right, I've had a great Saturday. I'm going to try and have an even better Sunday, you know? And if I had a bad Saturday, I was like, right, I've had a terrible Saturday. I'm going to work really hard to win it back on the Sunday. So my mentality was I was going to flip it, whatever. And they call that, I guess, like winner's mindset. Or it's like a winner's fallacy, really. I guess Bob Rotella would call it that, who's a sports psychologist. That really, like, you get to decide whatever, even though it's slightly irrational, you get to decide what you're thinking in that moment. And it comes from basketball, really, or it's called shooter's fallacy. And it's if you took a really good basketball player and say they're hot and they've missed the first 4, all right? Their mindset is like, right, well, I'm a great shooter, Steph Curry or something, I've missed 4, there's no way I'm going to miss the 5th. Give me the ball. Boom. Like, then when they've made the first 4, they're like, right, I'm hot, give me the ball, I'm going to make every shot, I'm on fire, right? And someone might say, well, you can't have it both ways. And they'd be like, yeah, well, I can if it's going to make me a better player. And that's the thing is you've got to, it doesn't matter that the mindset is slightly irrational. There are slightly irrational mindsets that are actually going to be really helpful. So that was it. You know, you would have to be like, if I'd lost, I was like, right, I'm going to come out and win it back tomorrow. And if I'd won, I'd be like, right, let's double it up tomorrow, you know, or week or month or whatever. So I was like, well, that's just a challenge. It makes for a better story, right? So let's go out and try and win it back. So thankfully I did.
Did you play golf much yourself when you were doing your betting, and were you able to apply some of these principles when you were playing?
I wish. Yeah, I play golf a lot, and really it all comes back to golf, and I can chat about that a little bit later from coming out of betting, because yeah, I loved golf. That has always been my passion since I've been about 14, 15. And really that's what got me into learning pretty much everything that's happened in my life randomly has happened through golf ever since I've been about 14. Even though I've not had that much success in the game itself, I'm a pretty decent club player in terms of I'm like 5 or 6 handicap, but I'm not. I've never been at a level where I'd like to have been, which was like a really good amateur level or really good, able to actually win competitions and stuff. I put a lot of effort and a lot of time into it, but I never really managed to get where I wanted to get to. But even said that, I've been challenged a lot in my golf in terms of like not being able to practice hard and then not being able to put it into play when it really counts. That's one of the reasons why I went to do the performance psychology course, and one of the reasons why I did a lot of things. But because of golf, and playing it through my teenage years, that's what led me to St Andrews Uni. That's the only reason I went to St Andrews Uni, because I found out that you could play. I was playing golf one time on the 4th hole, and I'm playing with these guys. I think it was Colin and Paul, and they ran a pub. And one of the lads that was working in the pub was called Nick. And they said, oh, you should listen to Nick. He's just gone up to St Andrews Uni. They get to play all the courses for £100. And I was like, yeah, but what do they have to play each round? Because £100, they were like championship golf courses, you know. And they were like, nothing, that's it. £100 for the year, and you're on. And I was just like, by the time I got to the fairway, I was like, right, I'm going there then. That was it. I'd never been to Scotland. I was like 16, yeah, I'll go to St Andrews. I just put St Andrews Uni down. Didn't visit it. I said, yeah, see you then. No one even knew where it was. They're like, what's St Andrews Uni? I was like, I don't know. Everyone else is going to Leeds, Newcastle, Manchester, Sheffield, like northern big cities. And I was like, yeah, off to St Andrews. See you later.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So that led me to literally, I was rocked up. It was funny. I had a £40 winning bet. So mum and dad drove me up. I had a £40 winning bet. Just from a football hacker. I picked it up. I said, can we stop from the bookies on the way up? I'm like literally just turned 18. Picked up the money. I remember arriving with my 2 suitcases. They had these swing doors in the halls. And you know, you're thinking like, right, I've arrived. Where's the party? I was just like, I'm on it. So I arrived and I pushed the 2 swing doors with my cases, right? But they swung back, and obviously my hands were away from the case, and the swing doors just came back and hit me in the face. So I was like, all right, maybe I've not arrived, okay? But I remember literally, 18-year-old, first time away from home, I just literally put the suitcase on the floor, never bothered unpacking it for 2 months. I literally lived out of a suitcase for 2 months, because I just was like, I had this poor South Korean roommate called Dong-Young Park, and he was this, he's learning English, he's doing medicine, he's in bed every night at 9 p.m., I think he was getting up at 5 a.m. to study. I was getting in at 5 a.m. most of the night. So it was a pretty interesting first 6 months. But yeah, that was a great time at uni. Met some awesome people. And through the golf there, there was an incredible golf club, met some amazing people and characters, and had some great stories, great times. Probably for another podcast, that one. But it was through that and through the golf, that's what got me my job in the gambling industry, because of my golf knowledge. And that's what really made me a golf trader. And that's pretty much what made me then obviously a professional gambler or a professional bettor and running the syndicate. And then and then as I played golf myself to try and sort my own game and hopefully to get into coaching, I went back to do the performance psychology masters because I was interested in that topic. Did all my dissertation, everything around pre-shot routines and golf performance, and worked with some golfers in coaching and some elite golfers. And then even came to Melbourne. The reason was my sister lived here, but also they had amazing golf courses in the Sandbelt, and I was playing pretty good at the time, so I thought, well, I'm coming here. So pretty much most of the places I've lived or the jobs I've got or the university I went to has been off the back of golf. So it's amazing that the reason I got into that, my dad started working at this golf club called Crowness Park, which is a great, really a lot of characters, really good sort of, I guess it was a new club, a working class club, and lots of ex-footballers were there, and it was just a great atmosphere, and we'd win a tournament and there'd be like 100 people watching or something, and it was just a great sort of sociable club. And my dad worked there as a manager, and because of that we got to start playing golf, and that's what got me into it. So it's funny how just the choice of your dad's career, that he decided he hated his job and he thought, screw this, I'm leaving my IT job, I'm going to start up in this golf club. I don't think it's going to make any money, but I want to do something different. And him making that decision had massive bearing on the rest of my life, much more than anything else probably that's ever happened.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so you came to Australia, what time of your life?
So I first came in 2015. So
right, so you came and then you went back and then you came again?
Yeah, so I came for the summer. My sister just said, you're going to love it. And I was like tossing up a few different places. So I just said, right, let's go. And came to December 2015. I had the best summer, ever. I knew a few people, Jill and Tinny, who a fella is. They had an awesome group of mates. They were like socializing. They had this great place right in the center of South Yarra with an amazing view. There was loads of events on. I was seeing a girl, or I went out with a girl for the summer I met after 2 weeks, and she was awesome. It was just like a really, when you just have a great summer, it's like the right time with the right people, and Melbourne was banging, and I just thought, this is great. Like, what have I been doing for the last 30 odd years? I need to this is the plan now. This is the aim. And yeah, so I came back the next summer and loved it again, and thought, yeah, I'm gonna make this my place.
Yeah. For people that play sport, you spoke about doing your dissertation in pre-game routine.
Yeah.
What were some of the things that you could pass on? Because there's a lot of guys that play AFL, for instance.
Yeah.
And they get the fucking wobblies when they're lining up to have a kick for goal. Or in cricket, it might be the fact that your pre-batting routine prior to the bowler coming in, you see batsmen that do certain things for that. Was there anything that was applicable that you learnt from golf that you can apply to other sports?
Yeah, I mean, pre-shot routines are... First thing is buy the book, The Pressure Principle by Dave Allred. If you're a kicker, he's the best kicking coach in the world. I was lucky enough to have brunch with him a few years ago, and he just gets it. The guy, he kicked himself. He was a teacher and then a rugby coach, and he kicked in the NFL in the late 70s for the Minnesota Vikings. And he ended up being the kicking coach for Johnny Wilkinson, Rob Andrew. Well,
yes, I've heard this. Yes.
Johnny Wilkinson in the Rugby Union World Cup in 2003. And then he's coached heaps of AFL kickers and rugby league kickers and rugby union kickers and stuff. But he then got into golf performance, took two guys that were just having, they were good golfers, great golfers, but they were 40th in the world, 30th in the world. They weren't really doing anything. He took Luke Donald to world number 1, won both money lists. Then they split up, and then he took Francesco Molinari from another guy who struggled with his putting, really nice guy, really good player, couldn't really put it all together. He took him to Open champion. Pretty much could have won the Masters, probably should have won the Masters that year that Tiger did come back and win it in 2019 and got 5 out of 5 points in the Ryder Cup. So he took two guys from just they were a lot better than journeymen, but they weren't able to put it all together. You know, great players that didn't have the and he gave them the winning formula. And I guess the advice would be, after reading that book, is that if you imagine your routine, it's not enough just, you want to have consistency, okay? But that's not the cause. That's the symptom. By that, what I mean is, if you do the same thing, like if you're mentally in the right place, you will naturally become consistent. It's when you're mentally thinking about other things that you take that extra second, you take that extra 2 seconds. You're thinking about the outcome. You're thinking about anxiety about what might go wrong. So what you really want is, obviously, if you get your mind in the right place, and Dave already, I think, called focus of attention, which is what are you going to actually focus on? And Rob Andrew would focus literally on the feeling or the sound of the ball coming off his foot. Johnny Wilkinson would focus on the smallest possible target, and Dave already actually took this from golf, a guy from Harvey Penick probably, where you really go zoning on the smallest possible target. Just in archery, you aim for the bullseye, right? Because that actually gives your systems the most amount of power as to what you actually want to do. So you go for the narrowest possible target and you have smaller misses. So Johnny Wilkinson would just pick someone like, right, it's going to land in their lap, and that's what he would be thinking on. Rob Andrew would be like the feeling off the foot. And in golf, it might be like you might be focused on your breathing or your rhythm. So there's lots of different things that you could be attentional on. Ideally, you don't want it to be too technical, because that'll normally, and that's where I've gone wrong a lot, because that'll break down under pressure. So generally, to perform well under pressure, you want it to be a general feeling or a holistic feeling, or something that makes you external from yourself. You don't want to be thinking about like a narrow internal, like what something in your body's doing. You want to be more trusting, and that's why visualization is so good, because it takes us out of our analytical side of our brain, like our left side of our brain, and puts us more into like 3D imaging, seeing everything, puts us more into our senses, which then puts us more into the moment, puts us more into the present, if you see what I mean. So that is a much better place to perform well under pressure, if you see what I mean.
In cricket, it's interesting. They always say getting your eye in, and you're breaking out the cobwebs. You're getting your hands relaxed, your chin tucked into your shoulder, and you're trying to make sure that you're timing the ball right. And it gets to a stage where you're timing the ball consistently.
Yeah,
and that's that whole idea of you moving from like, oh, I'm worried what the ball's doing, I don't know what the bowler's doing, to like, now I know what's coming.
Yeah.
And you almost see players get into that
found your
groove.
time, and they're trying to just find that little bit of time, and it's like,
it's in T20 cricket now. It's amazing how quickly batsmen find their timing.
Yeah.
And I really wonder whether some of those pressure principles come into play on that as well.
Yeah, and there's a big thing about getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And obviously an uncomfortable situation in anything, it's normally right at the start. So you imagine a first date, uncomfortable the first few minutes. You're doing a speaking gig. Sometimes at the start, that's when you're a little bit nervous and you settle into it. And I think if you can flip that, or if you can get used to those moments, get used to being uncomfortable, and just basically say, right, I'm going to smash it straight from the start, or the players are just coming out thinking, right, I'll just hit 6. And in a way, I guess the pressure's off, because the worst thing they can do is hang around for like 6-dot balls. So it's actually better to get out first ball rather than swinging for it in T20. So that is a bit different than obviously the Test cricket, Mike Atherton style of just averaging about one a bloody innings, of taking a long time to build an innings, or like a Jeffrey Boycott of just hanging around for 9 hours and making 30 runs. But like, it's not always, so in a way, I think probably flipping their mindset has probably helped a lot of them to the point of like, well, I've got to swing. So it's a bit like what some of the tail enders are doing in this cricket, in the Ashes that were just coming out.
The Baz ball.
Yeah, the Baz ball. It's just like, well, the more balls you face, the more you're likely going to be out. So, especially against a fast bowler, you could get an edge. You could go for 4, could go for 6. You're actually going to do better, just basically averages, than sort of doing better than Phil Tufnell or something by just swinging.
Feels tough.
It's got like 1.3 averages.
Mate,
great guy.
That's brilliant. And that's so interesting. I guess now, with your line of work, you did your performance psychology masters.
Well, should I tell you a little bit, because people might find this helpful. That obviously leaving betting, which was I'd done from 2004 to about 2018, 19, and I started to move away from it.
Yeah.
To then getting into this, which is a totally different field.
Well, run me through that.
Yeah, and I'll tell you a little bit about how I found that challenging and probably a little bit soul searching. So it's about around 2014, 13, 14, I really started to try and really focus on my own golf playing. So my mindset was always like, I see the gambling as an intellectual challenge. I enjoy it. I built this team. They're my friends. I want them to do well. You know, like I've got some great guys in like Tom and Brev and Mooney and Jobber and people who are involved, and great stories, great guys. But ultimately for me, it was like, okay, I want to win my freedom. I see this as a way to do that. I'm pretty good at this. This won't last forever. Let's do this for like 5-10 years, which maybe a lot of people now look at things like crypto or whatever, and they think, yeah, I'm going to try and buy my freedom, or they set up a startup, they go, right, I'll go big for 10, 15 years and then I'll sell it and then I'm free, right? The problem comes when you think, well, what do I actually want to do with the freedom? And then they realize that they actually loved running the business. So then they go and build another business, right? And they never get free. So, or they work in a company and they want to make partner of the law firm or PwC or whatever, and I'm going to be making $2 million and this and that, and then I'm free, right? But then they know this, so they're like, oh, there's 15 levels. Oh, I've just made it. I thought I'd made it. No, mate, there's 15 more levels. And you're like, oh. So they keep you in these kind of golden handcuffs. And the hardest part, there's plenty of people that are worth 40 billion and so on and so forth that are completely miserable, right? Some people love it. Like Warren Buffett is worth 100 billion, but he loves it. He loves the game. Gary Vee loves it, right? If that's your thing, if business is your thing, if making money is your thing, if you love doing it, crack on, do it, enjoy it. You might be not great for your relationships. You might want to look at that, but have a go for it, right? But for me, that wasn't my thing. I was not interested in making heaps of money. Maybe I did well because I wasn't interested in making heaps of money. For me, it was all about what is really wealth. And for me, it's time and freedom and health and doing the things I wanted to do. It's not money. Couldn't care less. So when I got my freedom, I was like, right, now I'm going to play golf. My plan being I'm going to get good at golf. I don't want to go, I wasn't planning to go pro, but I want to become a good amateur. And then I'm going to help other people who are struggling with their game that maybe been through some of the mental issues I had with my own sports performance, the inability to perform how I felt like I could perform in practice. And I was going to hopefully do that. The problem is as I went through 15, 16, I did get better. Like my handicap did come down and I did start to shoot some okay scores, but I didn't get anywhere near where I wanted to get to. And that was very frustrating. I was trying lots of different things. I was obviously reading books. I'd gone to uni and I was trying everything, but it wasn't happening for me. And at the time, I remember when it was about 2017, and it was actually in the second summer of coming back to Australia, I was moving away from the gambling quite a bit more. And I remember that I was just really frustrated. I'd seemed to be practicing every day and just getting worse and worse. And I'm like, been playing for 2 months, and I'm like, how can I be this bad? I've been pretty much focused on this for 2 or 3 years. And on the face, everyone's like, oh, you're living the life, you're living the dream. And I was like, yeah, but all I wanted to do was the freedom, really was to play good golf, coach people in a sport, which I'm passionate about, and really get with a girl who I think's awesome. And at the time, I'd split it with my girlfriend at the time, and I wasn't doing it in my golf. And I remember I was like walking along the Yarra, and you know when you're just a bit like, what is this all about? Like, what am I doing? And I actually started crying, and I was just like, you know, you just like, you got so much stress, and you're just like, so frustrated, and you're just like, I should have it all, but I don't know what I actually want to do. I'm like kind of a bit lost. And I remember I was like just in South Yarra, like where I think they do the rock climbing, I think. And I was just in there going like, what should I do? You know, where this isn't working, sort of thing. So at that point, I was like, okay, the plan of like, because my biggest concern was, right, if I don't get good at golf, who am I to then tell people how to do it? You see? Now, not all coaches have to be great players. A lot of them are because they can't do it. They make some better coaches, right? A lot of times, your Michael Jordans of the world aren't the best coaches, right? For obvious reasons. Sometimes your Steve Kerrs, who aren't the top man, become the best coaches, right? But I still felt like, for me, I wanted to at least win some of the battles that I was before trying to tell people how to basically sort their shit out. And a bit like a life coach who doesn't have their shit sorted out, who are they to tell everyone else how? I was a bit like, you want to walk the walk, right? So that was giving me a lot of issues as to like, well, if I can't even do this, then that knackers up my next plan. And then I've won this freedom, but then what do I do with it? And I'm a bit like, pfft. So I went away and little by little, I went back to, I actually got back with my girlfriend at the time, who's not my girlfriend now. My girlfriend now is Rachel, who's awesome, just saying. And we actually moved to Scotland together, and we live in Scotland. I went back and did my dissertation to finish off my performance psychology masters, and I started to think of options about which way I could go. That was because I'd pretty much backed myself into a niche of how I was then going to open up and be able to like coach people outside of what I was doing. And that's when slowly but surely, after a lot of different iterations, I came up with the workshop idea, the performance coaching. And a lot of it to start off with was helping people in sport, the golf, and also some actors and some in business and other fields. But yeah, I remember coming up with a couple of ideas, and I think this is really important as well, is you're probably not going to get, the first thing you think of is not going to be the thing that's going to be what you're going to end up doing for a bit of time, So when I came out of gambling, at first I thought I'm going to work with golfers. I actually did that with a few golfers, and I remember caddying for this lad. He was a great lad. But when you're out there and you're helping them and you're pretty much doing it for free to start with, and the young kids, right, and they get angry and they get frustrated and they get pissed off, and you're there just like, I'm out there for 6-7 hours trying to like, babysit them a little bit, and you're like, I'd rather be playing, to be honest. I want to be in this competition. I don't want to be like helping some other idiot. So when it's going good, it's great. But when it's going bad, it's probably your fault. And if it's going good, it's them, right? So, and individual sports people, by their nature, are going to be quite selfish. You've got to have a big ego. They're going to be selfish relationships, at least when they're in that zone, mostly anyway, because that's what it takes to become the best, right? Generally. So I kind of like started doing it. I thought, you know what? Not really that sure. I'll do this as a passion project. Not sure if I want to do this for everything, So then I went away and I thought, well, maybe with my betting background, I can do a workshop or a course for financial analysts, right? So guys in the city, stockbrokers, this sort of thing. People that are analyzing the city, I could go into them and say, look, come up with almost a workshop where they do gambling. I say, what would you do in this situation? What do you think happens here? And it would have been great, right? And I went to one of these coaching things on a Saturday. You get these coaching things, right? And there's everyone there, and they're like, what are you going to do? So a lady at the back stands up, and she's like, I've been divorced 3 times. I'm going to help, single women in the 50s get back into healthy relationships. And everyone's like, yeah, great. And then some other guy stands up and is like, yes, sir. And he goes, I lost 40 kilos. I'm going to help people lose weight. And I was like, everyone's like, yeah. And then it came to me, and I was like, as I was saying it, and this guy's grilling them, going, yeah, but who's going to lose weight? What's your avatar? And which women? So everyone in the 50s or just divorcees or in Melbourne or this. And he comes to me and he said, I used to be a professional gambler. I'm going to help financial analysts in a different way of working. And he was like, that's great. That's fantastic. This guy's got a niche there that can work. And as soon as I said it, I was thinking, that's the last thing I want to do. But until you say it out loud, I was like, why the fuck would I want to make rich arseholes even richer? I was like, nah, thanks. I'm okay, thanks. Like, from my mindset at that point, I was like, that is not who I want to be working with. I want to be working with either people who want to be great or just regular people. And I'm not saying I don't have anything against stockbrokers, but my idea at that point was like, that's not what I want to do, okay? And it was very much around, I want to, help the everyday person or help sports people or just help people who want to do awesome things. And that's what got me thinking, and slowly but surely developed at the end of 2019 into doing the workshops and building up that. And obviously COVID came and whatnot, but that's kind of how it all came to be, really.
There's never been a greater time in history where people are changing jobs.
Yes.
Never been a greater time, and yeah, there's been COVID and all the rest of it, but the idea that you can work for money or work because of a set of values are pretty interesting. And what you just explained to me was exactly that. You could work for people or work with people that make good bank, and the byproduct would be that you'd probably make good bank.
Yeah.
Or you could work with people that you're inspired to work with.
Yeah.
Has that been the governing principle or the compass that you've sort of followed now that you've done that in other things in life as well?
Yeah, I think when it comes down to it, I probably got clear on my values without actually really ever knowing what values were. Like now it's a thing and I'm like, get clear on your values. But really at 15, when I found myself in golf, and so something happened to me when I was like 12 or 13, which is not like, it's not even a big thing. It's not like anything crazy or anything. But I do remember that you come to high school. I was a shy kid at 8, which might not, I find that hard to believe, but they might talk now, right? But I was super shy at 7 or 8, okay? I was my, first kid, probably, I don't know, a mama's boy, a bit sensitive, whatever. And I used to sometimes, I'd have a few friends, but I used to sometimes hide out in the classroom at lunch break and ask the teacher if I could just brush up the floor. Like now, they wouldn't let you do it. They'd be like, social services coming in, like, what's wrong with this kid? But she's like, yeah, crack on. So the cleaner was probably like, why is this room so clean every time? But anyway, so I would do that sometimes. So I got to high school, and obviously it's a chance to reinvent yourself. So I was kind of popular. I was in the rugby team a little bit. I was in the rugby team throughout for the 7 years and into all the sports. And, but I was never quite, I was popular-ish, but I was never quite in the top popular lads, I wasn't one of the worst, but I was kind of in the middle. And I always wanted to, you want to be in the group, right? It's so important at 12, 13 to fit in. And to do that, I probably became the joker, became the cheeky one, also to survive. So I was always the one saying, you say things to the teacher, you're a little bit naughty, I'd get into trouble. And that kind of got me kudos. I was just a small kid. So I was like, I'll just do what I need to do. So, you don't get bullied, right? And stuff. So I was a bit cheeky, but I remember there was one time in our second grade at high school where you're like 12, 13. And there's a chance that we're all going away the whole year. So 120 kids are going away to Wales for this school trip. And the most despicable thing or the worst thing for a school kid is you got to pick your own tents, right? And at 12, 13, that's like a massive thing. You're going away for the week. You want to be in the right tent, okay? And so you've got all the girls on one side. So there's like 10 tents, 6 girls on one side on this field. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And then 10 tents on this side of 6 lads, right? So what could possibly go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? A lot of 13-year-old kids. So anyway, you there with the 5 lads, and they're like almost the 5 popular kids in our class are almost making us compete to be the 6th kid in the tent.
Making you compete?
Yeah, they're like, right, you 3, almost like me, a guy called Chris and Levy. We're like, right, you 3, we're going to pick one of you to be in our tent. But, like when you're like, right, we'll see who's the coolest at the moment. And they're like, you know what kids are like.
Yeah.
Just like, and it was just a bit lame. So I about a few days into this process of competition for the which wouldn't have been a prize worth winning because you were going to be the butt of all the jokes and pranked and bullied and everything like that and teased. So I was like, you know what? I'm okay, actually. I'm out. And I went into another tent with some really nice lads. And funnily enough, just making that decision to just go, nah, I'm all right. I'm all right, okay. Obviously, they then were like, oh, Ferret's actually quite cool because that was my name, it's called Ferret. But it gave me the power back. It was like empowering. It made me feel that if I didn't need to let anyone else tell me what I could be or to boss me around, or so then from then on, I was like, fuck it. I'm not going to listen. I was probably a little bit rebellious, not in a sort of rebellious of like going off doing crazy stuff, right? But just in the sense of like, I just do my own thing. So my mum and dad was like, just leave him to it. He'll get his grades anyway. Don't worry about him. But some of the teachers loved me. Some of the teachers hated me, because sometimes I just rock up. If I didn't like a class, I just wouldn't rock up. I'd just be like, I remember like when I was 15, 16, I didn't like these classes. I'd managed to hack it so that I could pretty much leave on Thursday at lunchtime and come back at like Monday lunchtime. Because I don't even know how I'd done it, but I'd pick these subjects and I used to just take class. If I didn't like class, I just wouldn't turn up. I'd just be like, screw this. So I'd just go off. I'd get the bus at like 11 on the Thursday and just go to play golf. And I'd just rock back up Monday lunchtime, just casually like, hey, what did I miss? And I had to, like, you could only miss 40 half-day sessions in the year or 30 sessions before you were, like, suspended or expelled or something. Or maybe suspended. So I went into the office and, like, pulled the register out and just literally found my name and just went and just like filled in about 50 blanks, and it brought me into like 25 half days that I'd missed, and I never got in trouble for it. So I was like, from that point of, and then from finding golf, that gave me something like a purpose and direction that I'd not had, and almost gave me confidence in myself as well, that I was like, because I was, you're like drifting around going, what should I do? And I was like, nah, I'd got a little bit of, and I think that's what sports do for a lot of people, is they give people that, at an age where you are a little bit, you can go, different paths, and it gives people like and the training and the discipline is great. I love it. I love sports. Whatever sport it is, whatever sport you're passionate about, all of the pursuits, but sports is the one that was big for me. And I just, freedom for me, it was like, don't care, like, right through, pretty much took that, like, if I didn't like a job, like, I have lots of stories of where and people might think, oh, you're being a bit of a diva. I'd just be like, nah, like, I worked since I was 12 years old doing paper rounds. Like, I would work every Sunday. I didn't miss for 2 years. I'd work every evening doing a paper round for 3 or 4 years. I'd get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to work in the shop. I wasn't scared of working. But if I didn't like something, I didn't think it was right for me, I'd just be like, I'm out. I'm gone. See ya. Sayonara. I'm going. Like, and that would be that. And that's pretty much to say. I guess that was it. My value was freedom. That was it. That was all I was ever trying to win. So if freedom to live where you want, freedom to hang out with the people you want to hang out with, and to choose passion projects, and so freedom and things that fill me with passion. That was it really. So
are you free?
Yeah.
You can tell.
Yeah,
it's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I'm listening to you and I go, how good is this? Like, it's the podcast is all about, having conversations with men, right?
Yeah.
And you've gone through your uncomfortable stages.
Yeah.
And
I've had lots of lows. Yeah.
And you're at a stage now where you have this very apparent, vibrant freedom, and it's a lot of blokes are searching for it.
Yeah.
I guess, with what you're doing now, what are some of the key things that you can give the men that are listening, in terms of whether it's advice or tips or whatever, that can help them start to change maybe the way that they're going about things in their life, so that they can attain, because I would say everyone wants freedom. So things that they can start to look at or maybe self-inquire about to maybe get them on the same path, the same journey to unlock that freedom that you're going through right now.
Yeah, and look, I think the first thing I'd say is that things look differently for everyone. So some people, the entrepreneurial life is not for everyone, right? So yeah, of course it can be highly successful, but as a founder, or certainly I realize this as running a syndicate, it can be very lonely, and really no one, your mates don't care. Like, I remember one time where we were up at New Year's Eve, and it's lonely, and we hadn't made any money, and I'm the one who's staying up past midnight trying to sort it out, because if we don't do it, I know the syndicate's over, and I brought all of these guys into it, and I don't want to let them down, right? So for some people, freedom doesn't necessarily mean that you don't need to you can still have a job and be completely free. It's more just what freedom looks like for you, And really, for me, I guess it looks like the ideal situation would be that someone dropped £1 million in your bank, and give or take a few things, you'd pretty much wake up the next day and do the same thing, right? That for me would be true freedom, right? Now, if you're already doing what you want to do, like with all the money in the world, you're like, well, I'm pretty much doing what fills me up, doing my passion projects. And I think doing what I do now, like, obviously there's like things that hassle with doing it, like marketing and stuff like that. But I love taking the workshops, and I love coaching people. I'm not great at all the social media stuff and all that, but you do what you got to do to get it out there, and trying to get better at it and getting help. But yeah, so you got to look at your own life and say, I guess, what would that look like for me? You see? And what would that freedom look like for me? And I'm not a big believer in retirement for a couple of reasons. One is, I think it was David Ogilvy says that retirement is fatal, right? So I think that chasing retirement, and it was my mate Turk actually said this, that chasing retirement is one of the worst goals you can try and go for, because when you get it, it's always like what then, right? Because I know after my betting, if you say I retired early from that career, or if you finished a sports career or something, it's like a lot of times they're lost. They don't know what they should do, right? So it's all very well saying you're retired and you're chasing that goal, but then what next, right? So a lot of great people, and also when they retire, a lot of people deteriorate. Their mind's not as sharp. They've lost a little bit of what made them then. Maybe they define themselves through their career or what they did, So I'm very much of like, don't just retire, just maybe do a little bit less, do 3 days, but just carry on working to your 80s, your 90s, whatever. There's plenty of people, like I think Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger are average age about 96 or something. They're still running $1 trillion. So Rose Blumkin, who was one of Warren Buffett's, he bought the company off her in 89. She got pissed off with her grandsons how they were running it, so she set up another furniture company across the road when she was 96 and ran it into hundreds,
What?
Yeah, so she was a lady who Warren Buffett said, don't mess with Mrs. B. He goes, I normally put the business first, but when it comes to Mrs. B, I put the manager first. Like, she knew what she was doing, and I'd rather fight grizzlies than fight Mrs. B. So I'm like a great believer in just don't retire. Just find things that fill you up, or pivot into things that you're interested in. So you can do more community-based stuff, more stuff where you're helping, contributing. So that's the first thing. And then within that plan, because now you don't need to have this nest egg for 20, 30 years. If you think, well, I just won't retire if my health allows it, is rather than put something on hold for 30 years and say, well, I'm building for this thing in 20 years' time, right? Where you don't know what your health's going to be like, you don't know what the economy is going to be like, you don't know if China are going to do something crazy, or this geopolitical situation, or the environment. That, in my eyes, is a huge risk. You're risking a lot based on how things are going to be in 20. We saw through COVID how quickly things can change, how freedoms can be taken away very quickly, okay? In this state, we're not in this state, just next to it, So you don't know what situations might happen, either on a general scale or individually for you. So I think when the time is good, when the time is things are good now, then bloody make the most of it now. Like, go for it now. Like, what do you want to do now? Don't worry about 20, 30 years. Don't bother retiring in the first place. I don't even chase that. And then figure out now, like, what, rather than think I'm going to work flat out for 20 years and then do something, like, think, what can I do now to make my next 50 years amazing? Rather than thinking, I don't really like this, but I'll do it for 10 years, or I'll stick in this relationship till this time, or I'll do this to then, and then do something about it. It's like, nah, just do something now. And yeah, sometimes that might mean a means to an end for a year or two. You might have to get some qualifications. You might have to do some things you don't like. You might, and there was lots of elements of the gambling that I didn't like, right? But I loved part of it, the intellectual curiosity. So although it was a route to freedom, I did actually enjoy it, which allowed me to do it for 15 years, and it gave me a lot of freedom. But if I hadn't have liked it at all, I probably wouldn't have done it for the 15 years. If I hated it, I wouldn't have bothered probably doing it, even if it was just about the money, because I would be like, well, but it gave me an amazing lifestyle as well, you see. So I'm very much like, if something's more than 2 or 3 years, like, it ain't a means to an end. That's your life. Do you know what I mean?
I do, and there was a really interesting thing that you said at the beginning of the podcast, where you're like, when your mates are asking you to put a bet on, right, and you're like, well, they don't understand that, like, this horse had gone from 20% chance of winning to 30% chance of winning, right? But if you put enough bets on with that mindset that you're trying to find that, differential, you're going to do okay. And it's the same with yourself. It may not be the perfect time, but there may not be a better time than right now anyways. So you got to make the fucking move. You got to take action.
And that doesn't mean for everyone like necessarily quitting your job and going screw it, but it means like at least getting clear on what is important to you. Like, what actually matters to you? Like, what gets you up in the morning? What are you passionate about? If you're not passionate about anything, what are you interested in? What are you mildly amused by? Go and investigate. You don't find your passions, you create them.
That was amused, not abused, right?
Amused, yeah, not abused. Just
I was like the Scottish accent there. Go.
Yeah, like, you create your passions, And I think Too many people think that it's like, there's this thing that's like, oh, if I can just figure out what it is and I'll go and chase that. It's like, look, you'll do lots of things over your life now. We have lots of different jobs. So you don't need to worry about this like big answer. For most people, they're not going to have this big answer. And we should never have to think of it when we're 18 anyway, or 16. It's crazy. It's stupid. Just like in relationships, you want to try a lot out to see what works, what doesn't work, what you like. You figure out more about yourself. Same with jobs. Same with interest. Try lots of things out. And you might love something in your 30s and then do something else in your 40s. And I guarantee when I'm 80, I'll probably have different things that are important to me. I might like gardening. It'd be more about contribution. I might like doing some woodwork. I don't know. I might like cooking. But it won't be where I'm at now. And I'm not where I was at when I was 20. And that's cool. There doesn't need to be this kind of great. I remember at 22, I was there like, you're 21 and you're like, you're deep and you're going for walks, long walks at like 1 a.m. at the ocean going like, what should I do? Where should I go? Existential crisis. And it just, then you figure out and going like, there's no great plan. Like, or in my opinion, there's no great plan. Just you get to define it. It's like Viktor Frankl says, you get to define what gives you meaning. And that can be goals, that can be experiences, that can even through suffering, even through hard times, even through challenges. But with that comes responsibility. If you're lucky enough to be born in America or Australia or the United Kingdom or somewhere where there is genuine freedom and genuine amazing opportunities, then the only person to blame if you're not doing what you want to do is who's staring you back in the mirror. And I genuinely believe that because the opportunities are there now for anyone to do whatever they want to do, to more than any time before, to launch yourself, to educate yourself, to be inspired. There's so many different mediums to connect with people that have got so much amazing things to add and to tell you. They've got so much value in the books and the videos, and you can just go and like literally for free. People 150 years ago would have to, Abraham Lincoln once walked 20 miles to get a book, to borrow one book. He walked 20 miles. He lived at the frontier. Probably the greatest president that's ever lived, the US president. We can now go on the internet and get any information on any topic in a second. We can put stuff into ChatGPT or whatever and say, throw me out some ideas. It is all there for us. We can literally go and connect with anyone in the city, in the world. There is so much. Like if you want to do genuinely whatever you want to do, you could do it. If you genuinely, wouldn't even take that long. Probably let just go away, and like within 18 months, you could probably do it.
And that comes down to carving out time for yourself.
Yeah.
Because so many people will make the excuse, I don't have time, I've got kids, I've got this, I've got that. It's like you have to carve out time for yourself, and it starts with knowing, where you want to at least take your first step. And, when you do that and even if you've carved out 20 minutes for yourself each week.
Yeah.
That's your 20 minutes, no exception. If you've got nothing in your mind, doesn't fucking matter, that's still your 20 minutes. It's whether it's the same for meditation or the same for, whatever other things that are important to you and your priorities. That's bloody good advice.
Yeah.
And I hope people listening to you.
I'll give you one last advice.
Oh yeah, go on.
Yeah. So when you're obviously, so Steve helps with my my foot. He's my podiatrist, and he's obviously an absolute gun. But my foot actually started playing up when I go on runs, and I've done a run every weekend I checked it the other day because my foot's not great, so the run might end soon. But 179 weeks straight, or 179 weekends straight, I've gone for a run, right? And I'm not saying that to brag. I don't even know why I started doing it, but like the point being that once you start doing something, just like James Clear, Atomic Habit, it gets a life of its own. So we just start like, now I'm going to get up on a run. Obviously, if I'm injured at some point, I might have to stop if I've got to rest it. But like, I'd get up on the side and just do it. I've done legs randomly. I got into a leg streak on Tuesdays. I've done them every Tuesday for 23 Tuesdays. Now I'm like, I've got some skin in the game. I'm like, I don't want to start again at 1. I've almost done half a year of doing legs on a Tuesday. Like, so if you want to start doing something, I guarantee that's been the most successful thing for me to introduce, is just start a streak. Start going, right, I'm going to sprint. I'm going to do some hill sprints every Wednesday morning. And just get up, whether you're hungover, whether it's raining, whether, you're not feeling it. It's your time of the month, I guess, if it's a lady listening, or whatever. You got jet lag, get up on the Wednesday and you do it, right? You might do a little bit less if you're not feeling as good, you know, but you still get out there and do it. And I think just that in itself builds, obviously it gets you into great habits and great discipline, but for me, that builds integrity. And what that basically is that you trust your own word. And if you think about it, I'm gonna pick my girlfriend up on Sunday on the airport, right? Now, if I just decided like, oh, I don't feel like I'm not gonna do that, she's not gonna take that very well, is she? If she had to get an Uber home, that's not gonna go down very well. When you make commitments to other people like that, you don't generally let them down that much, do you? Or most people, I think, if they're good people, they're not gonna let them down. No. But just ask yourself, how many times do you make commitments to yourself and then let yourself down? You know?
Yeah. Shit.
And I think that would probably be a lot more times than letting other people down. So you can do it. You're saying I'm putting other people's before myself. And I'm all about contribution. I'm all about helping people. But you've got to like trust your own word first before, you know, anyone else is going to trust your word, basically.
And that almost is like when you wanted to be able to help yourself with your golf so you can help others, right?
Yeah.
You know, you've got to be able to, you know, talk and walk.
You got to be living it. I feel like if you like, for me, I'm not going to hire a PT who's out of shape. It's just not. I'm not going to do it. They might have all the right tools and know all the stuff, but I'd be asking myself, well, why aren't you staying in good nick? You know, they don't have to be a bodybuilder, but you know, they need to be in all right shape. Because I wasn't going to go out with a nutritionist. I wouldn't see a nutritionist who wasn't also living that life and looking healthy and stuff. Now I know obviously people have other issues that make them.
It's okay. We don't have to be too diplomatic here.
Exactly.
Like, I know what you mean.
Do you know what I mean?
Like,
yeah. The same thing. Like I would want not to be best in the world, but at least to know what they're doing. And I know a lot. I'm not terrible at golf. I'm still out playing, and I'm still, I guess, trying to find a way to play good golf. And I've got aims and goals in golf, but now it's more of a hobby, or it's still my passion as opposed to it being my main work, if you get what I mean. I still feel like I've got a lot of knowledge in that arena that I can help people for sure. But from a personal point of view, for me, that didn't feel like mastery. It felt like you weren't doing it as I wanted to do it, you know? So I didn't like that. I wanted to do it right, you know? If you're going to do something, you want to do it right.
If people want to take charge of their life and do it right from now on, you know, you run an incredible workshop, you run a great program, you do a lot of coaching, you know, I'm sure there'll be people that have listened to you speak today that go, shit, I want to, you know, reach out to this guy and find out more. Can you just tell us the best way that, you know, anyone that's listening can reach out to you if they find, you know, what you're teaching to be, you know, really beneficial for them?
Yeah, thanks so much. So I guess Instagram, I'm quite active. So if you search Build Your Incredible or Mikey Knowles 1, that'll come up on there. So that's KNOWLES 1, but you can put the notes in. And yeah, my website, mikeknowles.com.au. But yeah, just shoot us a message. We can have a chat. Or just jump on Instagram. I also do a newsletter called 2 Minute Tips, where each Tuesday, I've been really trying to push this newsletter. Each Tuesday, I fire off 3 high performance tips for your life. I introduce a little story and then 3 tips, 2 minute tips, straight into your inbox every Tuesday. So
yeah, and I get them and I love them. So mate,
thank you very much. I try and keep them. I'm putting quite a lot of time in them to try and make them good. So hopefully someone likes them.
Mate, thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, no,
you know, I've found this so enjoyable just listening to you. It's awesome to have a chat, speak a bit of sport, speak a bit of performance, and know your story as well. And there will be people, and especially men across all demographics, that will benefit from listening to you speak. So thank you, brother. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. And I just want to say thanks. Obviously, this is such a great idea. Men, you know, I've probably been a little bit vulnerable about a couple of things there. I know a lot of people are going to have a lot more challenging stories than me. I think we can learn from different people's challenges. I think it's awesome what you're doing, and just getting men to speak about their own shit will help other men to stand up and talk, and that's great for mental health. It's great for everyone. So well done.
Thank you, bro.
Cheers, mate.